It's a great honor to be able to co-host this meeting with President Macron and my good friend, Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And in the spirit that President Macron has brought to this event, he's asked us to be very, very practical. We first heard about this event at the G20 leaders meeting. And since that time, the pressure of the last 6 months of actually putting deals on the table has been enormously helpful. So we're grateful for the very dynamic and pressure-filled leadership that President Macron has brought. So I'm here just to talk about very specific deals that came to the table because of this pressure. Many of you participated in the Climate Agora that we had earlier. And during the lunch break, I wanted to give everybody a sense of the kinds of deals that were put on the table. The first is the West African Coastal Areas Management Program, or WCA-WACA. It targets 17 West African countries with a goal of crowding in $2 billion to tackle coastal erosion, flooding, and climate change adaptation. This is an area that we simply have to move much more aggressively on. There's not a single African head of state who hasn't told me that the boot of climate change is on their necks. They feel it every day. We see in report after report that the developing countries have no doubt that climate change is real and is a real threat to them. But this particular deal, for example, the city of St. Louis in Senegal, with an initial $250 million package, it will be one of the first beneficiaries. $250 million, which includes $180 million from IDA, our Fund for the Poorest Countries, $20 million from the Global Environment Facility, and $9 million from the Nordic Development Fund. It's going to be presented to the World Bank Board early in the new year, and the hope is that much more public and private financing will come to the table for this critically important adaptation project. The second deal, and again, this came to pass because of the pressure that President Macron put on everybody. It's an Indonesian geothermal project. We've established what we call a resource risk mitigation facility established by the government of Indonesia with support from the World Bank and other partners. The facility will provide concessional funding and grants to pool and reduce the exposure of developers in early exploration and drilling phases of geothermal projects, which is often the bottleneck. With a $150 million investment from the government and $325 million in concessional financing from us and others, Indonesian geothermal is expected to leverage up to $4 billion in private sector funding to develop more than 1 gigawatt of new thermal capacity. And this is part of Indonesia's target to reach 5.8 gigawatts of geothermal capacity by 2026. A third deal, thank you, for Indonesia. It was remarkable to see how quickly the Indonesian government moved on this particular effort. A third deal, the new City Resilience Program. Mike Bloomberg is here in the audience. We're working with the Global Covenant of Mayors to bring together the largest global alliance of cities committed to tackling climate change. The CRP, as we call it, will design and structure climate-resilient investments and catalyze new sources of capital to finance them. Over the next 3 years, the CRP will leverage $4.5 billion in World Bank loans to catalyze many billions, we hope, in public and private capital for technical assistance, project co-financing, and credit enhancement. Essentially, the program will act as an investment bank for cities to structure programs that address their vulnerabilities to climate change. The first phase is starting with more than 30 cities with a goal of scaling up to more than 500 cities in the next decade. And the final deal I'll tell you about is one that's very exciting to me. It's called the Energy Efficient Services Limited, or EESL. It's a company that finances residential and public sector energy efficiency investments in India. EESL has already deployed more than 275 million LED bulbs, 4.2 million LED tube lights, and 4 million street lights in municipalities throughout India. Through an innovative bulk procurement business model, EESL has driven down prices to make climate-smart LED bulbs as affordable as conventional bulbs, saving energy costs for customers. By mid-2019, this program would have saved enough, just by mid-2019, saved enough energy to avoid 20 gigawatts of electricity capacity which would have likely been all coal-fired. Early next year, ESL will use a $220 million World Bank loan combined with an $80 million guarantee facility and leverage an additional $200 million of private commercial finance to deploy thousands of electric cars and charging stations and millions of smart meters throughout the world. 20 gigawatts of coal-fired power taken offline. So these are just some of the deals that we talked about. So let's India. We all know Prime Minister Modi is moving very, very quickly. We continue to have tremendous demand from African leaders for our scaling solar project, where we come in and we have the entire solution in a single package, everything from the auction to the procurement to the finance. And Zambia recently had record low auction of 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour, which has recently been financed through private sector sources. We have a lot of work to do. And at the World Bank Group, we have continued to evolve over time. As a global multilateral development institution, the World Bank Group is continuing to transform ourselves in this world. To ensure that we are aligned with our support to their countries to meet their Paris goals, today we're announcing that the World Bank Group will no longer finance upstream oil and gas after 2019. Now, just as in our coal policy, we haven't done any coal since 2010, we still leave the possibility that in exceptional circumstances, the poorest countries may need some help, but the policy will change and change dramatically. We are so grateful for all of you for being here. We're so grateful to President Macron, to Secretary General Guterres. For me, every day, I hear new facts and new insights that scare me even more about climate change. The melting of the permafrost, the possibility of unveiling viruses that the world has not seen for a very long time. There are so many different possibilities. We have to do this work with the greatest sense of urgency, but we also have to do this work with everyone at the table, the private sector, financiers, multilateral organizations, governments, and get the deals on the table. President Macron hosted this remarkable day in which we actually put deals on the table. We're going to do it again. We're preparing for COP24, where there will be even more deals on the table, and I think that could form the foundation for every country to increase their ambition and get to the 2 degrees Celsius target that we're all hoping for and that we want to leave to our children. Thank you very much.